Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy 2022. Welcome to Alive and Streaming, the first episode of the year. I hope everyone had a killer ringing in the new year. I did. It was pretty mellow. Just hung out and chilled with the family and just, played board games. It sounds like fun. Maybe it doesn't. But anyways, Happy New Year. Espen's here. He's here because I got a bag of popcorn and he just wants to have some of it here. There we go. Anyways, let's welcome my first guest of the new year, extraordinary filmmaker. He did Murder in the Front Row. He did a year and a half in the life of Metallica. And he did some other cool stuff we're going to talk about. So please welcome Adam Dubin. Let's bring him in. Where is he here?
And got it.
Adam.
Ted,
How are you, man?
I'm good, thank you.
Dude,
Thank you.
happy New Year, first and foremost.
Happy New Year to you.
And you know what? You are my first guest of 2022 on Alive and Streaming.
Thank you, sir.
No, thank you. I'm stoked.
Pleasure to be with you. Yeah.
Yeah. First and foremost, last time I saw you was at the Metallica Takeover weekend, which was insane.
It was. Wow. What a thing to like be a part of and to to put together. I mean, just to to see various portions of it, and I worked some parts of it, just filming some extra stuff for Metallica, as I've done for many years, but I also got to enjoy a lot of the activities. And I'm going to say the thing that I found, I mean, obviously I love seeing Metallica in concert, and that's just great, but I was kind of working that also. So the experience for me is a little bit different, but something that I was able to purely enjoy, and I'm going to give credit to your frontman in a second, is I saw the wedding band play, and I'd never seen that. And maybe you know what that is, right? I mean,
oh yeah, I was there too.
Yeah. So it's like, it's Kirk and Rob, but like kind of a whole bunch of other, I mean, you Bay Area musicians are killers, man. I love it. So whoever kind of steps in is just, is up for it. And I know Whitfield Crane sang, but so did Mark Osagueda.
Yeah.
And one of the great pleasures for me was seeing Mark and hearing, I'm not saying this any other way, I've seen him sing stuff other than Death Angel, like with Metal Allegiance, or in this case, the Wedding Band. And I mean, what a versatile and amazing singer, because he puts just the same thing into singing like a Rush song or some 70s funk song. And I had such a great time, but I don't think my smile was as big as Kirk Hammett's that night, man. He looked like he was like, just enjoying stepping out in that way,
Totally. I mean, I think Mark shocked it, and I told Mark, I mean, come on, man. First and foremost, I was like, dude, you went on at 1 a.m. Really, dude?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think Mark killed it. It really shocked me to when they played that Chromeo song. I was like, whoa, they were just pulling out songs. I was like,
right.
It was amazing. But Mark killed it, the whole band killed it. But I have to give it to Kirk and Rob having to play a 2-hour set with Metallica, then rush over to play another 2-hour set of the wedding band stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Just hats off to everybody involved. And there were some concert nights you remember, and seeing, for me, it's maybe about the third or fourth time I've seen something at the Fillmore. And there really is something to seeing it in an iconic venue like that, you know what I mean, with so much history that's right there on the walls. But it was like, of all the things that I did that weekend, it's this thing that stays with me very happily, and enjoyed it a lot. So
yeah, that was a fun time, and it was good to see you. But let's talk about Adam Dubin here, man. Let's talk about extraordinary filmmaker, I think. How did you get in? I mean, I've read your bio. Mm-hmm. You've done the Beastie Boys. You co-directed the Beastie Boys Fight for Your Right to Party. Am I correct?
Yeah, no, that's true.
No Sleep Till Brooklyn.
And No Sleep Till Brooklyn, yeah.
And, you were roommates with Rick Rubin?
Yeah.
Wow, dude. Yeah. So how did you get into
how did that all start? Right.
How did it all come together, my man?
All right. So I started filmmaking, this would go back into like somewhere in the mid 70s. A couple things happened, I would say. I got my hands on like a movie camera. That's like an old story. It's like somebody picking up a guitar or something. You know, it's just the instrument that
Yeah.
leads you, and you go, oh, I can do this. I can actually do this. And then, and I realized this later. I kind of put this together, but something that had an absolutely really shocking, like strong effect on me was I go to a matinee, because that's when, like by the mid 70s, I'm like going to movies by myself and at the local theater. And there was a re-release of the Woodstock movie documentary. And I would say that thing had a huge impression on me, like as like, oh, and you know, at the time I probably couldn't articulate it other than like, oh my God, it's massive. But it the melding of film and music in that way was very powerful. And you know, those performances are still very powerful. You can watch that film and it stands the test of time. And you know, it's not at that moment that I thought I'm going to do this, but it kind of put it all together. I started watching like more rock documentary stuff. Still not thinking I was going to do it. I still thought I would do like feature filmmaking, like just normal like narrative filmmaking. And but it did set my path. I knew that I wanted to make films. Like that was it. Like, I mean, if you'd asked me in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, any of these grades, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm making films. You know, other kids were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. No, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then kind of just as I got into college, a couple things happened, but one of them was MTV, like kind of kicked off. And so here you have the blending of music and film, but the commercialization of it. Like suddenly there was money in it. Like they were making music videos in the 70s, sometimes, not a lot, but sometimes, but there was really not a lot of places to show them. And so it wasn't monetized really. And suddenly in 1981, MTV kind of showed the record companies like, oh, if you make a good music video and you put it out and that makes the song a hit, there's money. So it actually contributed to the money stream. So, but you know, it also obviously took over the culture as well. And for me, I was like, that's really cool. And then of course the stuff I loved was like the comedy ones, you know, and guys like Twisted Sister, funny music videos that we remember. Van Halen, same thing, you know, and even rap ones that were funny. I just always kind of liked ones that had like a little story that was funny and everything. So, you know, it was a certain kind of filmmaking. The Rick Rubin part is the complete happenstance of my life. It was, you know, I go to, I applied to NYU. I wanted to go to NYU because they had a film school there. Like now there's film schools pretty much all over. Like there's a lot of film schools, but at the time there was only very few that were actually devoted film programs. And NYU was one of those schools. So, you know, like I would say, first hour, first minute, first day, first everything, I walk in and they're like, you're going to be rooming in the dorm was called Weinstein dorm, and it was known as a freshman dorm. And it was the party dorm. And they were like, you're going to be rooming with this musician guy, you know? And I was like, all right, you know, whatever, move in. And Rubin had already like been there and taken over the room by the time I arrived. And he had the biggest sound system, like bar none, because it was a professional sound system. It was like a DJ sound system with two turntables. And this is before the days when they were like, you could buy it like it's already pre-wired. You had a mixer, you had to wire it together. And the thing that like kind of these like monoliths, they were like the heads from Easter Island, these two Serwin Vegas speakers. They were concert level speaker, PA system, that were sitting up on each of the dressers. They were the size of like a small refrigerator, and of course, you know, loud as could be. And at the time, Rubin, you know, so this is like fall of 1982. Hip hop is just growing in New York. It's still it's sort of an underground thing. But Rubin would have characterized himself probably as a punk rocker and was like into punk rock and metal, you know, metal that was very fast, like punk stuff like Judas Priest and Motorhead and things like that. And very like he knew what he liked and he didn't care so much about anything else. He was very like focused. For a 19-year-old, he was very focused. And I always said, like, when I met Lars, which wasn't until about 7 years later than this, or 8 years, I said, oh, Lars must have been like this when he was younger too. Because the next most focused person I met was like that, like laser focused on like could see the vision was Lars Ulrich. So Ruben was very much like, not that the vision was like, oh, I'm gonna have Def Jam. It was just like he loved this sort of music, and he became like a proselytizer of that kind of music. And whether it was punk or very closely on its heels hip hop, which he saw very rightly as punk for the African American kind of type of music, he became an absolute person who like pushed that and wanted to be involved in it. And I don't think it was so much, it wasn't really money. It was just like, I love this and I want everybody to love it. So he DJ'd it, he did it. And in doing that, the Beastie Boys kind of came along to that. But they were just guys that were around New York with a bunch of other young, at that time, hardcore music kids. You'd see them at the clubs and stuff. And so I know like as I've done a film, Murder in the Front Row, about the scene in San Francisco at the time. And San Francisco is such the Bay Area is such a rich environment that it was able to host two scenes simultaneously. One was the metal scene, and kind of right alongside is the punk scene. And these things kind of were, happening and blending at certain points. New York was having, at that time, a hip hop scene and a punk scene, and at points crossing over. And where that crossed over, you got the Beastie Boys. But, kind of Run DMC were crossing the other way a little bit too. So it all was this great thing that was happening, and I was in that thing.
Man, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
To be there, kind of like in the beginning, especially with Rick Rubin and the Beastie Boys. Now you already in film school. Was it Rick Rubin that approached you? Hey, man, you want to film this video, or how did you get that Fight for Your Right to Party? Right. That's an iconic video.
Thank you. You got to now jump 4 years, and okay. So a lot happened in those 4 years. So you go from like, we were roommates from the fall of 82 to, whatever, the spring or into the summer of 83, but became friends, and he later like roomed with other people, but stayed in the dorm. That was the wild thing about Rick. He had money. He could have gotten an apartment. A lot of people pretty much stayed in the dorm 1, maybe 2 years, then got apartments around town. He liked the energy there. He liked being around, like you opened your door and you just had like, people all around and everything. And I think he fed off of that. I mean, by the time he was, you go a few more years, by 85, 86, he's already doing Def Jam. He's not attending classes anymore. He's not doing anything. So in my last year at school, which he was already now out in the world, he now had an apartment on Lower Broadway. I was interning for him. I just was like, well, you got to do an internship. I'll intern for Rick. So I was doing, every odd job that you do when you intern, which was fine. And he was my friend. So, it was kind of like hanging out. And some of those nights I'd be hanging out at Chung King's studio which was in Chinatown of New York, and watching the Beastie Boys record the songs that would ultimately be on License to Ill. I always thought that Rick Rubin would have directed Fight for Your Right to Party, the first single off of the album, if he were free to do so. He certainly was capable of directing if he wanted. But what had happened just before that was, just before License to Ill came out, Rubin decided he wanted to make a feature film, and the feature film was a film called Tougher Than Leather, and it starred Run DMC. It was, I think, it was a fun script. It was my co-director of Fight for Your Right to Party was Rick Minello. Rick Minello had been the late night desk guy at our dorm, but he was like this guru of film. He was like Orson Welles or something. He knew everything about every film. And what happened was Rubin was like it was up to his eyeballs directing Tougher Than Leather for Run DMC, and the shoot was running long and it was costing more money. And what happened was the Beastie Boys record they dropped the single and it blew up. It blew up everywhere that they put it in, every market that thing went in. For instance, it was very exciting to be around Def Jam at the time, because you would hear like they played it last night in Detroit on whatever the rock station was. the phones lit up. I mean, this is in the good old days of radio. The phones would light up, and the question was, who is that? What is that? And when are you going to play it again? Like, it was so, it was new at the time. It was like, it was new and crazy. And it just, you were watching this thing catch fire just the way, in its day, a Beatles song, took off or something. I mean, it was just in this, history has repeated itself with singles on the radio or songs on the radio. So MTV needed a video like ASAP for this song, and they were holding a place in heavy rotation at the time in 1986, which was like, in 1986, if you had a slot in heavy rotation, it was worth more than gold. It was like, it could make an artist, it could make a song, and that's what they were holding. So nobody'd seen the Beastie Boys, really. I mean, they'd been on tour with Madonna. They got booed the year before. Nobody really seen what these guys look like. Of course, there's no internet to go to, and there's no anything. So Rubin comes in and he gets Rick Manello to like direct the video. But Rick is he was great and funny guy, but he was a nervous kind of guy, and he hadn't directed before. Now me, I had just finished film school. I was like, I'll do anything to direct, and they knew me. The Beastie Boys knew me at this point. So it was kind of like, it just kind of fell together. It was like, okay, Manello will direct, he'll bring it, Dubin will join, we'll all write the video and we'll film it. And that's how it kind of came together. It was just very, what's nice about it, Ted? It was this very pure energy. On that one, it was very pure because nobody was expecting anything. So it was all just artists working on it. You know what I mean? It was like, they brought me in. When we went to write the video, we went to Mike D's apartment, and the 5 people in the room were the 3 Beastie Boys, Rick Manello, and myself. That's it. It was like, go come up with something. We come up with something. We get some money. We shoot. It was actually a very ambitious shoot for the amount of money we had to shoot 2 days and to shoot like a sort of narrative linear story like that. It would have been much easier to, let's say, I always say, if somebody really knew what they were doing, they would have put them up against like a graffiti wall in the city and just shot them doing the song. But I think that's what appealed to people. I think it was like that there was a story with gags, and they were funny, and the Beastie Boys certainly came across really well. It just kind of showed the world who they were, and of course, great song and great attitude in those guys. So
and you had Kerry King in it.
So the second one happened, and it was interesting to see because 2 months later, we're there to shoot No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which Kerry, of course, did.
That's right.
So Rubin's starting to step out a little bit. He's working not just with hip hop, but he's like starting to work with, one of the heaviest of thrash metal bands, Slayer at that time. And he's Kerry's on that track. But also like that, you could start to see the record company influence. Suddenly, at that shoot, we had like chairs set up behind the camera for like all these people from like, what was it, CBS Records. People came down. I was like, it's like, who are all these people? It was starting to get strange. You could see what was happening. And, we just set about shooting the thing. Kerry came in to be in it. There was kind of, I've talked about this before, there was a bit of a battle because the Beasties were kind of guarding their turf a little bit. They liked Kerry, but it was like, he was going to get this standout solo moment in their thing, and they wanted to do something kind of funny with it. So a compromise was struck. They were going to, the original thing was to get a monkey to do the solo. Oh, and then Rubin was like, we're not going to get that. And also the monkey costs a lot of money actually for a trainer. So then it was like we had no money. So it was like, what are we going to do? We're going to get a gorilla suit. So I was like, well, if there's a gorilla suit on any set, I'm going to wear it. I love gorilla suits. And
do you really?
Oh, I just think it's hilarious. I mean, I go back to like the Three Stooges. You know what I mean?
Okay.
What's funnier than a gorilla? It's ridiculous. So, because it doesn't really look like a gorilla. That's the main thing. It's so ridiculous. It never really sells it that it's a gorilla. So anyway, the compromise was the gorilla will start playing the solo, and then Kerry will knock him out of the way. So yeah, I got the full force of the armband of spikes, of nails. I got that, and it was great. And Kerry's just great. So it just kind of added that other element to it that was authentic metal. I mean, the Beastie Boys obviously were kind of spoofing the genre a bit, but there's nothing more authentic than a Kerry King guitar solo. So there you have it, and that was in it. And then really after that, the Beasties embarked on the Together Forever tour with Run DMC, and I didn't really see them again because they kind of from there they left Def Jam and were kind of off into the world. And what I'll add here is obviously the Beastie Boys themselves, as their confidence grew, they were extremely competent. They were great, musicians, great producers of their own music, and great filmmakers because they were able to make their own videos. So, I just look at it as like our paths crossed at one moment. I certainly contributed to helping something happen with them, but those guys, man, they really latched onto what they could do best. And of course, nobody would have believed it back then, but Rock and Roll Hall of Fame artists, and I think everybody feels pretty strongly that they're they're good with that. So it's nice to see.
You were a part of the history, dude. That was Beastie Boys was a really big thing when those videos came out. They were huge. It was like a culture change pretty much.
Yeah,
during that time, and you were a part of it. So bravo, man.
Thank you.
Bravo. Now, I do want to talk about one of my favorite music documentaries. And for all you people out there who don't know what it is, it's a VHS tape, by the way. A VHS.
That's
a year and a half in the life of Metallica. These two things here, dude. I still have it, Adam. I don't have the DVD. I didn't stream. VHS. Some of you don't know what VHS is, then I guess you're way too young.
But you can download it now too. You
can download it.
Yeah.
How did you get that gig?
Okay. So after the Beastie Boys, I'm kicking around working on, videos of various kinds. And some of the ones are stuff that like Rick Rubin was doing. He had moved to the West Coast in Los Angeles, was doing now Deaf American Pictures and was doing that and Deaf American, records. And he was doing all this stuff. And so, I was fortunate in that sense. I got to work on videos. I did videos for Wolfsbane and Trouble. I love Trouble, right? You remember Trouble? And
Wolfsbane with Blaze Bayley?
Yeah. Wolfsbane. And a bunch of other things, bands I worked for. I did work for the Black Crowes. I did some videos. They were, the original lineup and everything, and some of their early videos. And I was just kind of a working director, working at Propaganda Films, which was a house, production for film and video and everything, but mainly music videos. And my manager kind of fielded this thing. At the time, it was very kind of touch and go as to what would happen in it. It was, Metallica's going into the studio. They might want to film some stuff, and could you go talk to them about it? And it wasn't of course Metallica was cool, but it was going to be a long type of gig, but it was by no means certain when I went to talk to them. It was very clear this is what was in the room. Lars wanted to do it. James didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? It was just an interference. As far as James was concerned, it was an interference. As far as Lars was concerned, this might be a cool thing. Now, if you think about Metallica at that moment in time, we're talking about the fall of 1990. They've completed the Justice for All tour. We know that the history, the 4 albums leading up to that. These guys just success after success and on their own terms. No radio input, no radio airplay, and so they were a pretty hard-edged bunch. And they really were we do things our way, and that's it. And of course, that power resides between. Mainly between Lars and James is where that focus is. So I go to a meeting at the studio that they're starting to record at, which is 101 Studios in North Hollywood. And it's very clear that Lars wants to do it. James is this is a stupid idea to bring people into our creative world. By the way, the managers don't even come down to sit in the studio. Nobody from the record company. The record company's handed a record when it's finished. Metallica does everything themselves the way they want. So you got to understand the intrusion of me being there with a camera was they were looking at it as what the hell is this? Plus, they were trying out this new producer Bob Rock, and that was like a new element to the game, so it was really a lot, as I think about it, it was a lot for them to take on and do. So what I said to them was like, look, I said, I'm out here, whatever. Let me, I'll film some stuff. If you like what I do, then that's great. And if you don't, whatever, you'll never hear from me again. I'll disappear. So it was like, fine. So you could see James like just shrugged his shoulders, like, if this is what it takes to get rid of this idiot, then fine, and he just like gets up and walks out. And Lars is like, all right, come back tomorrow. Now, at the time, they were only working on drum sounds. It was like there was almost nothing going on, and getting drum sounds is like, you could, I mean, you just want to pull your eyes out of your head.
It's boring.
It's like, oh my God. I think even the technicians and engineers were like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It basically is you hit a drum, then you try, then you hit a drum again. It's like, it's all day. So I just made a study of it. I just filmed all this stuff, and Lars was the only one down there, and I filmed a little of him, but more like what the technicians were doing and everything. And I just turned in my footage, went home, and I figured that was probably it. It would be an interesting story that I got to, maybe talk to Metallica for a day.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I knew a lot of people that knew them. It wasn't they were not yet at this thing. They were still like approachable and stuff, and
they didn't break the hemisphere yet, like the atmosphere. Like they didn't,
I mean, that was coming. Yeah,
it was coming, but
Yeah.
you were at the point where I could still talk to you. Then maybe a year later, bye.
Yeah, I mean, just the world, happened for them. I mean, everything it took off. When you get on into a rocket, it launches. That's it. You're launched. So I came back anyway. Obviously, I got a good phone call. They want to try it. It was supposed to be a 4-month thing. It turned into 10 or 11 months. And in a way, it never ended. And we just went in, but the recording of the record took forever. But I'll tell you the thing that like, you knew right away. And remember, I suddenly was privy to something that everybody wasn't yet getting.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting in a room. Bob Rock very, I think correctly had them suddenly record all together as one in order to get the drum tracks, but all of them are in a room together, which is of course in the film.
Yeah.
And I think that connection between them, and even fighting between them, I think that somewhere that winds up in the creative soup that makes that record powerful. And so I'm filming, and what I'm hearing, even in its raw state, when you hear things like Sad But True, and of course Enter Sandman, and of course like all these other songs, I mean, you Unforgiven or whatever, I mean, you're just like, oh my God. Like, and I just had a sense, I'm like, this can't just be me. Like, this is really good. This is not just like, oh, it's cool, it's Metallica's next record. This is like, these songs are epic. And I just had a sense of it even then. And then when I'll never forget when Bob Rock mixed like the first minute or two of Enter Sandman, and it was like kind of, I mean, of course, you're hearing it under the best conditions with the best speakers in the world. You start to hear this song, just think of that opening, just think of how that song opens in its first minute or so. I mean, you're just like, oh my God, this is like an epic rock record, like kind of Led Zeppelin epic, you know what I mean? Like this is going to be with us forever. And I remember having this feeling like this thing's really special. And then, you're happy to be working on it. It took forever. I mean, the guys themselves were like going out of their heads during the making of it. So we filmed that. And then right away they started, the tour starts taking off. Well, they needed things for it. They had shot all this footage. So the first thing was like, can you cut like a kind of some opening thing? The first thing they did, they premiered the record in Madison Square Garden. They had a listening party. It was in August of James's birthday, in August of 1991. So 10,000 fans given tickets to just stand and hear the record. But also in between that was I had cut like scenes from the movie. So that was the first cutting of that footage to go, oh wow, we could do something with this. That led to, they were like, nobody's going to open for Metallica during the tour, so we're just going to do a movie that opens. So I cut a movie to open the tour, which was about 15-minute history, because I think they realized that there was a lot of fans coming because of the music videos for Unforgiven at that time, and the first one was Enter Sandman, great videos. And a lot of people coming to the band that hadn't been there for Ride the Lightning and some of the earlier stuff, and so they were like, who are these guys? So they had me cut a movie for that, and then from that it led to like, hey, could you cut a music video for Nothing Else Matters? And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. They weren't sure if they were going to like it, but obviously they liked it. It was like, I just kind of tried to make it about the camaraderie of the guys. I had all this footage from like shooting for a year, and it was great. We put that, so that was out. That led to come on tour with us and shoot even more footage. And then it was like, we want to have a piece of product out for fall of 1992. And that became like, all I could tell you was the entire year of 1992, my life was in an edit room, except when I left the edit room to go film more stuff and then go back into the edit room and create Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica so that it could be ready for release in November of 1992.
Wow, dude. I mean,
it was like, it was pretty breathless.
What a whirlwind, huh?
And then, of course, what's in it is like, I know people have latched on. I'm very proud of this, that a lot of people have said over the years that they learned how a record was made from watching those videos, and they learned about the nuts and bolts of it. And, I've talked to people that, went into the recording business because of that. And, kind of it spurred them. So that's really nice. And of course, there's some famous moments in it that I love. And there's people I know who come to me and have said they kind of do lines from it as if it was like Spinal Tap, which it's, in a way it is, and certainly those arguments between Lars and James are some classic stuff, on the floor there.
Speaking of Lars and James, you said Lars was into it, James wasn't, but wow, the foresight that Lars had on this.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier, he's a really focused dude, huh?
He's the guy with vision, of everything. I mean, it's, like anything, I think like we're seeing in the Beatles Get Back, if you watch that. And I always felt that was like something that came before that I looked to. Somebody's got a vision, but you have these talented people, but everybody's contributing something. And it's the same thing here, by the way. It's no knock against Jason and Kirk. I mean, their contributions are tremendous on those recordings. And indeed, as I found out more when I went on tour, I always like to give props where they're due. Jason Newsted is a killer on stage, and just, every night, 110%, never less than that. And, a fan favorite. And I think that's where he realized, he could make a huge difference and bring it. And so he did every night. And, and Kirk, I mean, it's epic, the solos, I've always said that solo, which he struggled with for The Unforgiven, which we see him struggle with it in the movie.
One of my favorite parts, dude. I mean, that was killer. I mean, before we get into that, cameras were just rolling, right? You had, once you press play, there was like kind of like no break for you because you had to capture everything.
Yeah. In a funny way, though, this is the difference between video and film. A film load, you load up the magazine of film, you have 11 minutes. And it's really expensive. And of course, because then you have to process the film, then you have to transfer it to video, and then you see kind of what you got. So you don't see it like 3 minutes later. You see it like 2 weeks later or something. So
pre-digital.
Yeah, no, we didn't go video because we wanted that classic look. Again, my hat's off to Metallica, because I really pushed for the classic look of 16 millimeter film, which is why it looks so classic and beautiful, which is also, going back to the Beatles, why we can look at the Beatles now and it looks as beautiful now as when it was shot, because you clean that up and it's gorgeous. So they sprang for the money, but interestingly, you can't run it, the camera, unendingly, you know what I mean? Whereas if it was video, I think, you kind of just put it up. You can always put a GoPro up, and just leave it. But, this, we got to be like kind of judicious about it. And so, I learned to get like a little bit of a feel for when something was going to go on. And like I mean, Ted, you've made many records, you've recorded. So what's really recording? You go in the booth, you play some music, and then the band comes out and listens to the music. The Beatles are doing it and Get Back. That's exactly what they do. They play and they listen. So you start to get a feel of where stuff's going to happen. I mean, I think in the Beatles case, they had enough money. They were running it all the time, but that, I mean, that was their money at that time. I was a little more careful on that. And I kind of got a sense, in other words, if I got a good take of them playing something, I probably had it and I was good. I was more interested when they would play it back and listen and then talk about it. That's where I wanted to be.
Gotcha.
Or sometimes it would be mundane and boring, and sometimes it would be, you know, you get a little fireworks and stuff, and you know, I put that in the film. I'm always proud of Kirk that he allowed me to show a vulnerable moment like he did during the Unforgiven. I think the Unforgiven is one of the greatest solos that he has ever done, and I think it's one of the most epic rock solos. The way that solo interlocks with what's happening in the rhythm track, I think is just fantastic. On that day, he was struggling with it a bit, and again, I'll say that anybody who is any musician, not just a guitar player, can know the feeling of, you know what you want to do in your head, you can hear it, and it doesn't happen on that day, and you can't make, your fingers don't do it and your mind doesn't do it, and it's frustrating. I mean, that's why on one day Lars was trying to do something and he put the stick through the drum head. I've talked to so many people who've been, you know, people who are drummers say, oh, I've had that happen. Yeah, but there just wasn't a camera rolling. But they've done that. They've gotten so frustrated. They throw the sticks, they kick the drum. Same thing with Kirk. He didn't, that day he was having trouble. He came in the next day and he nailed it. And it's the solo that we know, and it's epic. So I think that, like, I loved capturing in the moment the reality of what it meant to be trying to execute something at this very high level, to play what he's playing and struggle with it. It's so human, you know what I mean?
It is.
You don't
it's
want
authentic,
them to be,
it's real.
exactly. You don't want them to be gods that like walk in and just blaze away and nail these solos. I wanted to show they work at this stuff, you know? And again, sometimes you get that moment as a filmmaker, you get a blessing and it happens, you know?
Was there ever a time any of the band members said to you, like, dude, could you just stop rolling and get out of here? Was there moments like that?
Yeah. It's funny, not in exactly the way that you might think. It's okay. So this is how I knew that they liked me, and even Hetfield was like, I was okay, was when they started to like haze me and harass me, you know, and throw things at me and give me the finger and curse me, and anytime I turned on the camera, start giving me a bunch of crap and like throwing stuff. The time that I turned off the camera was, and I'll tell you when it was. Look, James Hetfield allowed me in the vocal booth with him while he's doing a vocal, and particularly for a hard vocal for like Nothing Else Matters, you know, kind of like not his stock and trade, but like he's going to a new place. And I'm standing there with a camera in the vocal booth, you know, what, 5 feet from him or something? That's pretty intimate in a sense. And the lights are low. Nobody else is there. The rest of the band's not there. This is like his moment. Bob Rock's there. Randy Staub, the engineer, maybe one technician. And I filmed it a few times. And then we both, you know, he kind of looked at me and gave me a nod and was like, I got it. You know what I mean? I was like, and I felt I had good film that represented what was going on here that day. Now you give them time. So I think what kept me there with them was not just that I knew when to turn the camera on, but when I knew when to turn it off. And sometimes you got to give them some time. Everything doesn't have to be filmed. And when somebody's trying to get something, look, if Kirk had probably asked me at some point, I would have turned it off. He just didn't do that. But James, at those moments, I just had a sense of it. So I just kind of didn't film at those times. There was a time Bob Rock said, could you just leave it alone for now? You've got enough of it. And I was like, you know, I kind of agreed with him actually. So I was like, all right, that's fine. It didn't happen a lot though. They were very open, and we, you know, we caught what we caught. And, you know, of course sometimes I'd miss stuff and they'd yell at me for missing it, you know, and there'd be a fight that happened or whatever. The fighting started happening a little more when we got to the mix. I felt when the mix started happening.
I bet that seems like the place where the fighting would start.
Yeah. Plus they were all tired of it. It was, you know, you're now like 8 months into this process, and okay, and we all know about the mix from Justice for All, you know what I mean? Yeah. So that's kind of playing in the background of this. And it's, I think even without cameras, without anything, and you're a musician yourself, the mix is a place where it all comes down to, you could go this way, you could go that way. This could be a little louder, that could be a little softer. Do you play this part or not? It's all choices. It's just a million choices. What sounds good? And everybody wants it to be great and perfect. So that's an environment for some arguments and some fighting. And that happens. But I mean, ultimately, you know what? Thank God, man. Bob Rock he wasn't just the parent in the room, he was the experienced parent in the room. And great set of ears, obviously a great producer. And I think he just knew how to get the right balance of the music for what the song was, but also kind of balance the personalities there too. And just say, let's bring that bass up because you have room for it, because you created room for the bass. And let's have that in there so it locks in with the drum, and he's just mature enough to be able to push that through and be listened to. And so you have a wholly different sounding album than you do on A Justice for All, because you had a guy who was like experienced enough to be in the middle of all that,
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm glad it's been documented that they had a great foresight. You were involved in it. Now, when it came down to getting it ready to edit and all that, the final product, did you have to go back and forth with Lars? Did he have final say on how it looked like, or did you have free reign, or was there a lot of input from him?
Yeah, man. I had a lot of free reign. I mean, here's what was going on. It's 1992. If you look at the tour schedule of 1992, it's blistering. I mean, it's like, because they're getting, requests for bookings from like places in the world that nobody's played, that they never played before, and they're trying to hit everything. And remember, they're a lot younger then, so they could, Hetfield could sing like 3-4 nights in a row at that time, and they were just going for it. They knew they were blowing up, and they were going for it. And so they were pretty much away, and the only time I saw them was when I would fly out to tour dates. I was ensconced in a editing room in New York with my editor Sean Fullen, same guy who edited Murder in the Front Row.
And we'll get to that soon
later. And he and we're I'm just editing away and sending out tapes. Now, sending out tapes at that time was like, there was no internet to post this stuff or email it.
There was not like no Dropbox link you could send to somebody or like, hey, or text it. Look at this.
we would edit some stuff, run off a tape and a VHS. I would drive to LaGuardia Airport, to Delta Airlines, which had a thing called Delta Dash. And you could give it to them, and it was like because Metallica was in parts of the world that were like FedEx didn't even know about, So it was like it would go somewhere and it would arrive, and then I'd hear from my friends on the tour the haze they had to go. They'd be in some other country, and this VHS would arrive, and then the tour managers would have to like scare up a VHS machine that could do like all systems and usually this would all be at 2 a.m. and stuff. And there were many times I got phone calls from Lars waking me up at God knows whatever time it was in New York. It didn't matter, but it was waking me up because he was up someplace on the other side of the world. And he would, he'd be like, get up, go splash some water on your face and then come back to the phone. I got to tell you what's going on, So I was like, okay. And I'd take down notes and everything, with half asleep and doing this. But, he paid attention. I give him a lot of credit for the level of quality control in a crazy situation, which was the Black Album tour. And still he watched everything we sent to him. I think the other guys watched a little bit at various times. I would say probably James didn't care to look at it. You know what I mean? I never got a sense that he was looking at it, but Lars watched everything and checked it out and really gave me a lot of free reign. And I was able to, I think, express like what I had to. There was very little that we didn't agree on or whatever. And I just always felt, look, in the end run, it's there. I am working for them. I am making their vision of what they want. And I can put the best of myself in there and they let me do that. In the end run, if he really wants something in, then it's his film, you know. And I never had any conflict about who the producer was here. It's their thing, you know what I mean? When it's my thing, when it's Murder in the Front Row, then I'll put it in what I want. But it's their thing, and you know, I still felt it was great, and it was telling of what that experience, that year and a half, was for them, you know. And that's kind of what I was trying to get in there. I'll just say some great experiences still stand out on that, which was, I'll always remember 1992 as two things that just are like, so they just are, even 30 years on. There was unfortunately, Freddie Mercury had succumbed to AIDS, and then there was this big concert April 20th of 1992, and it was like on the world stage. I mean, it was at Wembley, and just so many great rock and roll stars played. But I mean, you know, Metallica was on the bill. Now, they were kind of lower on the bill at the time, and we were proud as hell that they were, like, you know what I mean, like entering the world of like the biggest rock stars in the world, you know. And you had people from the Who and Led Zeppelin, and the Def Leppard guys were there, but of course Queen, you know, Queen is like epic. So that was really amazing. And sort of right after that started the Guns Metallica tour, which was, I mean, just as the most insane, epic, you know, huge rock bands kind of in a way together, in a way dueling. For the fan on any given night, it could be like the greatest thing, or it could be a riot, you know. It was pure rock and roll craziness. But you know, you had to say, like, that was an amazing time to like witness something, you know. And I didn't see all of it. I mean, I would jump out, go to some dates, film some stuff, jump back to the studio, keep editing. So fun time.
You were a part of it, man. You were a part
Yeah,
of some big history with them, and
no
my
doubt.
hat's off to you. And the year and a half in the life of Metallica, one of the greatest. You did a good job. And if people haven't seen it, you should watch it, and you should watch the outtakes. That's on you. I watched it on YouTube, dude. That's amazing, bro. I
That's
love
awesome.
outtakes. You know, the stuff that didn't make the film and all that. Like,
So,
awesome.
well, yeah, thank you, Ted. It's awesome. They very kindly, all these years later, they were coming out with a box set of the Black Album, you know, as a reissue thing, you know, on its 30th anniversary. And they asked us to go back in. So I went back in with the same people, the same producer, Jack Gulick, the same editor, Sean Fullen, same people I did Murder with. And we, I mean, this is such a rare treat and gift, really, to be given as a filmmaker, to be able to revisit this stuff all these years later. So we got all the footage from we just did kind of the making of stuff. So it was really the stuff from the first part one of the making of the like the recording studio stuff. Because I felt that was, if I could go to anything again, I kind of want to go to that. I felt there was more in that I wanted to express. And so we took that footage and we edited, I forget how many, but a whole bunch more stories. And of course, we're not limited by time now. I had a very strict time constraint. I should mention this on Year and a Half of Life. The videotape was supposed to be like around no more than 2 hours. So like the first one came in at 90 plus minutes. The second one actually went over 2 hours, which caused a huge thing with Warner Brothers that Lars had to like push them on because he wouldn't cut it, and which I'm fine with. But I'm just saying he used his muscle on that one. But on this, you know, 30 years later, I mean, since it's something that's going to live on a DVD and then obviously go out onto like platforms like YouTube, it could be anything. So I could, you know, I had time to go into, like, I had shot a lot of footage for Don't Tread on Me, which was obviously not like one of the hit singles that was released. They didn't make a music video for it, but I had all this footage of how that song was made. And it's not one of the bigger songs on the album, but it's cool. So I got to like kind of make a whole making of that song. I got to do a lot more on, you know, the big songs like Unforgiven or Nothing Else Matters. And it was cool to like go back in and explore that footage again and see what everybody was doing. And the thing I always noted was like, wow, it was interesting. You're filming these guys and they're talking in the control room of the studio. Nobody's got cell phones. It took me a while to realize it. No. Wow. So this is what's interesting. People have a conversation, and let's say you kind of say a few things and you stop, you think for a second, you think for a minute, you go, and normally what would happen now? People would look down, they would start getting involved in another conversation happening someplace else, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
with somebody else. There was nothing. And so it was kind of interesting, the focus that brought to the making of that record. It's a very interesting social point. And I only realized that watching these guys, from footage, from like a window into time 30 years ago. But it was great to have a chance to go back. And I'm really glad the fans like have some more of that to look at, because I think it'll even more inspire. So it's kind of interesting seeing this Get Back thing happen. Michael Lindsay Hogg, the original director, who's still alive, did not get to re-edit his footage years later. Peter Jackson, the great director, got to like re-edit it, thankfully. I'm just thankful I got to like go back into my footage. So that's pretty cool.
That is awesome, dude. I mean, good job on that one. Now, Murder in the Front Row. Was Murder in the Front Row, was it your project, your baby?
Mm-hmm.
No one kind of called you and said, let's do it? Is that something you spearheaded? Because I've watched it.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I went on the Amazon and bought it, but they didn't have the the physical copy. So I bought the digital copy and I watched it.
Okay.
And I thought it was great,
cool.
man. It was great.
I thank you so much. I love the physical copy, the DVD, because we tried to make it like folds out. We put like posters in it and stuff, stickers. I wanted it to be like, and of course you appreciate the old 70s albums when you got them and they were gatefold and there would be like stuff in there and everything. And you were like, I mean, it's the coolest thing. Of course, my favorite was Kiss Alive with the stickers. I mean, that was my favorite thing ever. It came to me in a very natural way, and I produced the film and I directed it, and I wanted, it was purely my thing. Nobody said go do this, and it came to me in the most natural way during the making of all this Metallica stuff. I've made friends with particularly Brian Liu, who is, there's a book, Murder in the Front Row, mostly photographs, great book, and it documents the scene, and him and Harold Oyman, the other author, photographer, had this, created this great book. Brian Liu, who I became friendly with through the Metallica world, we met for the first time when Metallica was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and just kind of, why do you vibe with somebody and not somebody? I don't know, you just became friends. And a few years later, I re-met him, and he had the book with him, and he gave it to me. And I remember, and this is probably about 2012 or so, I was working on the Metallica, what would become the Through the Never movie. I did the making of that. Okay. And so I talked to Brian, even interviewed him, but he gave me this book, and I loved the book. It stayed on my nightstand. I thought it was great. I knew it was the great basis of a documentary, but years went by, and I just, other things are happening in my life and everything. So, whatever. I had young kids. I mean, all this other stuff that anybody could relate to. And finally, in 2016, I got to a place where I was like, I felt I had enough wherewithal that we could do the film. So I called Brian up. I said, I'm ready. If you're ready, that we could start to do this. And to his credit, he kind of wanted to do it. Yeah, I mean, he knows who I am, but he still, he guards like the story of the Bay Area thrash scene very personally. And so he wanted to just talk with me, make sure that my approach would be what his approach was. And I could just tell you what that was in a nutshell. It was like that we tell it more from a fan perspective. And the reasoning for that is that if you go back in time to a point where, let's say, all these guys, if you go back to a time when, let's say, James Hetfield's 18 and so are the people around him watching it, mostly 18, let's say maybe they're 15, 16, 17, but like young people, before anybody's real famous, there's no real difference between them. And I love that, like, during those years, I mean, you see James wearing like T-shirts of the other bands, Death Angel, of course, key amongst them, but they're all supporting each other. It was kind of, obviously Metallica's fame is kind of moved up faster, but there was a time when all these guys were just guys. The kids watching were the same age as the kids playing. It was just all one thing, and everybody was supporting each other. It's in the pictures in the book, and I wanted to tell that story. Now, I told the story of Metallica in my mind from like 1990 onward. I knew the story a bit from when they were younger, but I wanted to tell that story, and I did not want it to be the Metallica story. It's a story with Metallica in it, but it's not their story. And that was what was in the book. So we were of the same mind about that. I knew that anybody making this film, whether it was me or anybody else coming to this, you would have to secure the participation of Metallica. That would be a key thing. And I figured, okay, that's something I could bring to it. I mean, having had this history, I've never asked them for anything. The only thing I ever asked them for was if they would sit for this interview, and which they did, thankfully. But everybody else, I also did not start with them. I had about 40 interviews done before I got them to sit. And that was by design. I did not want them, I didn't want this to be hung on their shoulders or anything like that. I wanted it to be like, let's interview the fans first. So I started out right where we do. We got Brian Liu and Harold, of course, and a whole bunch of the what you would say were the early fans and photographers and scene makers, guys like Ron Quintana, who published Metal Mania, and of course, very importantly, had KUSF, which would play this music when nobody else would play it. And on and on from there, kept working at it and gathering people. The first, what you could say is, celebrity interview, if you could call it that, or rock star, was, and we had a lot of interviews done by this point, was luckily, Gary Holt stepped forward. And I thought I was just going to get him that day, but I was very lucky that he was playing with Slayer at the time. And when he did it, then I don't know if he talked him into it. I don't know how it happened, but Tom said he would do it. And it was like, okay, that's great. And then, of course, Paul Bostaff plays with them. So, another Bay Area, veteran. And then, it was, Kerry, I think, said, yeah, sure, I'll do it as long as it's like just 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, great. 15 minutes of Kerry King is very strong. That's very powerful stuff. So yeah. I was like, I'll take what I can get. And we went out, we met them on their tour, and great interviews. And that was the first, kind of guys of that level. And then I just kept, going along, getting various people, whether it was fans or musicians, Alex Skolnick, Mark Osegueda, just, kind of guys from Metal Allegiance that kind of cropped up, and on and on. And it wasn't until way later that I got Metallica. And I think it was only once I got Metallica, and those some great interviews, that I then was able to get, really nice guy, Dave Ellefson, stepped forward. I really wanted to obviously get Megadeth's piece of this. And I always said, and I said this to them, and I'll say it here, I was never interested in any tabloid stuff. So to me, it's not going to be about Dave Mustaine getting kicked out of Metallica. That is, it doesn't even really interest me. It's been told I was not making behind the music.
Yeah.
So to me, the amazing thing about Mustaine is everything he did afterward, and of course the character that he is. So I really wanted to tell that. Now, I was lucky to get a great interview with Ellison, and then Mustaine said he would do it, and I think it's because he probably wanted. I don't know the guy. Brian knew him, and Brian came down for that one, but I'm grateful that he did it. I think he wanted to obviously be somebody that tells the Megadeth story as he should be.
Yeah.
So there I had it. I had the two, guys at the beginning of, the originators of Megadeth telling that story, which amazingly, like all the rest, runs through the Bay Area. I mean, what happens? As soon as they form Megadeth, yeah, it forms in LA, but where does he bring it? He brings it up to the Bay Area to test drive it with Kerry King. No less.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the book is amazing. The film's amazing. What did you think of the book when Brian handed it to you? I mean, I have to give Brian and Harold. Who would have thought to bring a camera around early 80s? No one did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, thank God for them, because they captured some good moments. So when you got handed the book, what did you think of the book?
Absolutely blown away. I was blown away. And the things that caught my attention was the pure visceral nature of these photos. I think because it was shot by guys who were not photographers, you know what I mean? Not really, no schooling in this. They're not framed in a way that they don't look like, some very trained photographer, but that's what made it beautiful. There was no trained photographer down there. The rock press was not covering this. It was not important to them. It was important to Ron Quintana and the people who wrote for him and would do reviews of shows and albums. And they would take these photos, and Harold was one, Brian was another, few other guys were around at that time. And I was knocked out. And what really knocks you out is everybody's young, and if anybody looks at this book, if you look at any of the photos in the book, the energy, the pure youthful energy that's portrayed in those photos, I wanted to get that story. In the book, there's a bunch of people who've written like essays. Alex wrote one, Alex Skolnick, Rob Flynn, who did a great interview for us. He wrote one. And I wanted to, kind of, they expressed something, but it was really, there wasn't very much written in the book. And I knew that there was more to that story. I knew that like something else was going on because I could see it in the pictures. So when I got a chance to interview people, I think it brought them alive. But here's the thing, here's what was great. When I would interview people, I would always, whoever it was, I mean, if there was pictures of them in the book, great. I had printed them off and I had them on like cards because it was easier than handing them the book. And at the end of every interview, I would like say, could you just look at this? I'd hand them a picture. And the most amazing thing happened when I handed them a picture from the book, and especially if they were in the picture, but even if it was a scene that maybe a show that they were at, I would watch somebody who was basically in their late 40s or something just become 18 again, or 17 or 15. And it was amazing. And they just were like, sometimes they'd tear up, but usually they would be like, oh yeah, this was this great show, or that was this time that this happened. And it was amazing. And I just always felt like a people of the generation that were in that early thrash world, by the time I was interviewing them in like 2016, 17, and 18, they were at the right point in life to want to tell this story. And so I got a great story out of them. If it had been 10 years earlier, too early. 10 years later, it's just harder, and people are, not everybody makes it, or they're not ready to talk about it. It's like, I got everybody at the right time because we got some great stuff. So I'm very proud of it.
I think you did too, because, like you said, any earlier or any later would have been good, but it's just one of those, like, maybe they had time to process everything. You know what I mean? Like, you grew up and everyone's getting back, the bands got back together, they're doing their thing, they have a different mindset, and here you come in with Brian Lou and everyone, like, we want to do this, and they go, I could revisit that for a little bit. Let's check it out. And you know what? You did a good job with Murder in the Front Row and all your stuff. And now that we're coming close to the end of our stream, Adam, and I wish we could go longer, but you know what? When the Bass Strikes Back tour comes,
yes,
we're gonna hang out. We're gonna hang out when we get to the East Coast.
Can't wait.
But before we close out, I usually ask my guests 12 questions.
Sure.
And you got to fire away. Are you ready? Are you ready, Adam Dubin?
Ready.
Okay. Mild or spicy?
Mild.
Okay. Dogs or cats?
Go dogs. Yeah.
A movie you could watch over and over again.
Let's see. Let's see. It's probably any of the Peter Sellers, the Clouseau movies, like Return of the Pink Panther or something.
That's a new one. Okay.
I love the Pink Panther movies. I crack it up every time. So yeah.
What time does your alarm clock go off?
I have kids and they have to go to school, and usually my alarm clock's going off around 7:30. Something.
You know what? You're the first person that says, my alarm clock goes off. Everyone else is, I don't have one.
But my phone goes off. But yeah,
you're a professional. That's what it is. All right. A song you love to sing when you're all
alone. Let's see. I'll tell you what it's been lately. It's I've Got a Feeling, the Beatles song that they sung on the roof and everything, just because that documentary knocked me out. And I love that song because John and Paul are trading off vocals. So I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. What great musicians and songwriters, huh?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Dream vacation.
Italy, and I would say probably any place in Italy, but you could pick the Amalfi area or something like that. Is whatever it is, Portofino, all that stuff is beautiful. Just
Italy's rules. One thing about you that probably annoys others.
Let's see. I like loud music. I like it loud.
Me too.
Yeah,
I like it loud. All right, we have something in common.
My whole life, people tell me turn it down. So yeah, it's loud music.
Good, good, good. Your favorite smell?
Let me see. Probably so. It's probably like it's food related. Probably like baking bread, like good bread.
Oh,
Man.
dude, if you ask Mark in our band, he'll tell you, oh, Ted loves his bread, especially European bread.
Yes,
I
yes.
love, oh man.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about bread right now because
Gain calories even talking about it. You know?
totally, totally. An instrument you wish you could play.
That's a good one. I'll tell you what, I play some guitar, but I wish I could play a pedal steel guitar because I love that sound.
Oh,
Pedal
nice.
steel is so cool.
Wow. There you go. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 5, Adam Dubin, how good of a dancer are you?
I'll say, I'm, a 2 maybe, or 3 maybe if it's the right music. I suppose, but not something I'm looking looking to advertise.
Oh, it depends on the music, and that is correct. And the last and final question, Adam, what did you have for breakfast today?
Yeah. I had toasted bread, of course, and butter, and some cereal that I like, granola based cereal that's good and healthy. So
Nice, nice. Everyone, please, Adam Dubin right here. Give him a shout out.
Ted.
Follow him on, wherever he is on. He has a website, adamdubin.com. It's awesome. I was just on it before the stream today. And Adam, if you have anything you want to promote, any of your future works that you're excited to talk about, the floor is yours.
I just working on, always working on stuff, and it's funny, as I go along, I'm like working on music. I'm not not a great musician. Filming great musicians is what I do, but it's fun. I got a group that was called Das Moose, and we play around, and we're gonna be doing some stuff, but it's just pure for fun, and I think that's the nicest thing about it, is that just you can just enjoy whatever you do. Enjoy. So filmmaking, I mean, I made a music video basically for fun because there's no music, there's no money in it, which was for our friend Alex Skolnick. I did this video for him that came out a couple of months ago for Florida Man Blues. So I love just this creative process, and it's so great. And I love what you guys do. I love seeing Death Angel. I can't wait to see you guys.
I know a lot. I mean, the first time I met you was at Fufun Electric.
Yes.
Yeah, in Montreal.
Great.
I love
Great.
that place.
Great.
I love that place.
Yes. Yeah, you guys were that was a hot show that night.
Yeah, it was. Everyone, thank you for coming on the first episode of Alive and Streaming for 2022.
It's an honor.
Anyone who's watching, please, if you haven't watched Murder in the Front Row, you have to. It's a must. You have to watch it. You get a good dose of Bay Area history. And it's directed by this man here, Adam Dubin, with a lot of contributions from all the Bay Area thrash bands, Brian Liu, Harold O. Man, you have to watch it. Go to Amazon or go to Adam's website, adamdubin.com. You could buy stuff. He has links all over that site. So check it out. Adam, thank you again, bro. Appreciate it. I can't wait to see you in the East Coast because I know the Bay Area Strikes Back tour is going to happen. I know it's going to happen.
My brother, Ted, I love you. Thank you so much.
And let me do let me do a promo real quick for everyone. Death Angel is playing a live show in San Francisco at the Great American Music Hall January 22nd. We're like under 50 tickets from selling it out physically, but we're also live streaming the show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's going to be the first for us, live streaming, because we've done some live streams with no audience, just to the camera. Yeah. Now we're live streaming with a camera and audience, and we're playing with Mordred. I don't know if you remember good old Mordred. They're back together with a new album called The Dark Parade, and we're having a Bay Area local band, Molten, up and coming death thrash album. So it's going to be great. If you want tickets physically and for the live stream, you can go to our website, deathangel.us. Everyone, have a good Saturday. Adam Dubin, like I said, go to his website. Check it out, adamdubin.com. It's awesome. So everyone, have a good weekend.